All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Gift to Gab. Today we have a very special guest, Jen Hamilton, who was nominated for an Emmy Award for Outstanding Choreography for Scripted Programming. She was the choreographer for Apple TV's Season 3 of Physical. So first, I want to say congratulations on being nominated for an Emmy. That's super exciting.
Thank you.
How did you react when you first found out about being an Emmy nominee this year?
I was confused because I was in Palm Springs with my kids, and I actually had forgotten that that weekend the Emmy nominations were going to come out. And I woke up that morning and I had like a couple of my friends saying, "Oh my gosh, congratulations, congratulations." And I had like a moment of like, I didn't know what was happening. And I was like, oh, I think today is the day. So I was, and then I was like, oh my God, this is very cool. Like it's an honor to be nominated, and it's my first nomination. And I did the show for 3 seasons. So I did all 3 seasons, which was kind of special. So it wasn't just the season 3. So it's just like I had this whole show that I had for a period of time, and it was such a special time in my life. So to get the nomination for that project in particular was really, really cool.
That's awesome. Who was the first person who told you and said congratulations and you were like, what are you congratulating me on?
He's another choreographer by the name of Dominique Kelly. He's awesome. He just finished choreographing Gatsby on Broadway,
Oh,
um,
awesome.
that I saw last time I was in New York. So he has always been a supporter of mine and me of him, and so he was the first one that said it to me.
So I know that this was your first Emmy nomination, but have you ever been to the gala before this year? How was that experience for you?
I had never been to the Emmys. I'd been to the Oscars twice,
Okay.
um, and choreographed them twice. So, yeah, but the Emmys I hadn't. It was a brand new experience, but it was so much fun. And, you get all these extra little perks. You get invited to different parties, and there's a reason to dress up and, walk the red carpet and just enjoy the night and with your community, which was really, really cool. So it was such a fun time.
That's
Amazing.
so awesome. What's the difference between like the Emmy Awards and the Oscars going to both of them?
They're pretty similar. I mean, just in terms of sitting in the audience and waiting for all these awards, obviously you have different kind of categories with the Oscars, and it's a little bit more I guess prestigious in a way. But the Emmys in its own right is awesome as well. And it just feels actually the Emmys feels a little bit more like of my community, so but they're both great. I mean, they're both fun events and, reasons to celebrate and to honor what we do in this business.
So for me, I've always been so attracted to dance because of the performance aspect of it all. That's what really draws me to the craft of dance. And growing up, lots of people would always ask me, like, oh, do you want to be a dance teacher when you grow up? And I never necessarily was like, I want to be a dance teacher. I always said, I want to dance. But
Mhm.
as I get older, I realize that choreographing is something that I love to do. So have you always known that you wanted to be a choreographer, or and if so, did you know that you wanted to choreograph for television specifically?
That's such a great question, and it's kind of similar to you, in terms of, yeah, I started as a dancer, and it was my passion, and I really just loved it from a little girl at 4 years old, and something that just happened to take and really resonate with me, and I wanted to just keep dancing and dancing and dancing, and I didn't really think about choreographing or teaching for a very long time. And then I think it's just the natural progression of what we do, and yeah, I got to a certain age and felt like I want to give more. I want to create more. There's different ways I want to, you know, share what I know with kids, across the country or with professionals that are trying to like step into the industry and teach them and help the next generation. And then with choreographing, yeah, it became really attractive to me because I started assisting another choreographer at the age of 12, 13, so pretty young. She's a very prominent choreographer named Marguerite Derricks, who is incredible. And I was with her for 25 years and learned so much from her. And we did a lot of things together. And so through that process with her and starting from the beginning with her, and then where I got to with her before I left her and went on my own, um, just really grew the love of choreography and like, oh wow, I want to do this project. I want to do this. I want to have, I was just inspired. And then the dancer's body too, as much as I'd love to dance as hard as I did when I was, younger, it doesn't work that way. And so, which is fine. And it's just, to accept that. And I still love to take class for myself, and I still love to do what my body does and be thankful for that. But there becomes a point where you no longer can like push it to a certain, extent.
Has there been a specific moment in your career that you felt was a turning point to get achieving a big nomination like the Emmys?
Um, yes, but it kind of was not like the turning point you would expect to hear. So I was choreographing and dancing many, many years ago, and I kind of hit this point where I was getting frustrated with it, whatever timing it was, just like things weren't lining up, right? Like jobs weren't really happening as much. Like I was like very close on so many things, and like just the alignment was all off.
Yeah.
And I I had one child, and then I was kind of just like in a little bit of a struggle period. It was just kind of like not the best time. And I got this incredible opportunity to interview and go up for La La Land, the feature film. And
Yeah.
I went in like 4 times, and I was like, this is it. Oh my gosh, I know I'm nailing this. I am like getting this job. I am like, I was so prepared. I was so ready. I was so like jived with like the director and the producer. And like, I just had felt like I had everything in my corner. And I was
Yeah.
like, this is it. This is going to be my turning point moment. And I didn't get the job.
Hmm.
And my friend Mandy did, and she's awesome and incredible, and I love her to death. And I was like, oh my God. And so that moment, I was like, all right, I'm done for a sec. Like, I need to pivot. And so at that moment, decided I wanted to open a dance studio,
Oh, okay.
and never had thought about that in my life.
Hmm.
I ended up getting pregnant with my second son and birthing him and the studio within the same year. And
Wow.
it's 9 years later, and now I've built this dance studio as well, and still being able to choreograph. So it was a low point, but I pivoted and turned it into a positive so that I could develop and create something that was my own, and something that I could control, and something that I wanted to contribute and put out into the world and impact kids.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about the process of how you opened your studio and like got and just in general everything about owning a studio. It's a completely different ball game than just like teaching classes and going to classes. So tell me a little bit about your process and how that ended up happening.
I'd love to, because it is, and you're right. It started from a couple of parents that had kids in their teens, and or their younger teens, and said, I just need my daughter to start dancing. I hear you're wonderful. I'd already had a reputation out here from teaching and everything and choreographing and all of that, but I had never had a studio. And so I was like, okay, so I like rented out space at a place in LA, didn't have my own space yet. And I just started creating like a curriculum and creating classes throughout the week. And I got a couple of families and parents behind me who were like, no, like we need to continue this. You need to continue this. You need to continue this. And I found a space that was really small that I rented out and made my own.
Mhm.
And it was like one room. And we started with like 8 kids. And it was me and one other teacher. And I had been familiar in LA from like The Edge and like Millennium. Like I had taught there like, young professionals who were like, or people that are in the industry, like a
Yeah, you
young,
were very well known already
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah. But I
yeah.
wasn't, kids didn't know me here. Like I had taught on convention around the country, but
Oh,
kids in
yeah.
LA, not familiar with me. So
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh, I'm also like starting over from scratch. Like, what the heck am I doing? Okay, Jen, why don't you just make it extra hard on yourself? And so I just went with it. And this teacher and I taught every class. Like I was teaching every single class with her. And we had like, I don't know, 16 classes a week at one point. And then it was just she and I and she and I. And then it's just kept building.
Mhm.
And I would find like, small stepping stones and stepping moments where I was like, okay, now I need this and I need to put this in place and we have to do this and I'm going to need a person that helps with this. And then we needed to move and something across the street opened up and I was like, oh, it was already a dance studio. And then I rented there and we had 2 rooms. And then we got a little bit bigger and then I added more teachers and then I, put more people into play. And then now we're on our third space and it's even bigger. And it's, now we're at like 350 students
That's
starting
awesome.
from 8. And so I, it's entrepreneurship is difficult. I will say that it comes with really high highs and it really low lows. And so there's a lot of sacrifices. There's a lot of time and it doesn't really stop. Like once you've decided to do your own thing, there's beautiful moments and then there's really challenging, hard moments that I've learned. And I'd never owned a business before. So that was also a learning curve for me. But something that I was excited to learn about and excited to go through. And yeah, I've had a lot of curveballs and I've had a lot of like special moments too. And it's kind of cool to like, when I get to retell the story, how you asked me, I'm like, oh, okay. Sometimes you just need to remind yourself that you did, like, I literally started it from nothing.
Yeah, I
So,
know.
but it is a different beast, and it's very time consuming and it's very, but it's very rewarding. I mean, I think the most special part still, is walking into any classroom there at any time that's a class is going on. And sometimes even when I'm having like a rough day or I'm really stressed out or just like a lot on my mind or a lot on my plate, I literally will just go to the studio and I'll go choose a room and I just sit in there and I watch. And it makes me so happy because I'm like, ah, like these kids are really happy and they're happy dancing and they're happy, being in a class. And it's a very positive environment that I like to create there too. So it always rejuvenates me and it re-inspires me and makes me remember why I chose to do that.
I love that. So is your company, do they have like, is it mostly just kindergarten through like 12th grade? Do you guys have open adult classes as well?
We don't have, well, we have one open adult class, so I'll tell you about that in a second. But we do kids 2 to 17. So
Okay.
we start at age 2 and we go all the way up to 17. And it's just a training studio. So we don't do competition or anything like that. I chose not to put that into our mix. I think it's great and healthy and wonderful. And I taught on convention for so long and watched that whole side of it too. But for us, it's just training and it's about performance opportunities and it's about growth and other kind of life skills that I learned through dance that we
Yeah,
try to implement at the studio. And
love that.
yeah, because it's like really important. Like I remember what dance taught me, and I don't know if this is like for you as well, but like I learned how to be accountable for myself. I learned how to have self-discipline. I learned how to have self-worth and have an opinion and express myself and, you know, learn to move and tell a story with my body. And I think that all of that is really helpful to add into your normal life too. Even if you don't, a lot of these people aren't going to walk out the door and be professional dancers. It's very difficult and challenging career. But if you can get some other things with it while you're doing your dance training, that's what I kind of like to focus on there and kind of finding who you are.
Dance definitely shaped who I am today. And
Yeah.
I really appreciate that your dance studio is training specifically because I grew up at my first dance studio. I did competitions and stuff. And
Mhm.
then when I became like 11 or so, I think I went to that dance studio that I had competitions and kept doing all that kind of stuff. But then I also was dancing at a company.
Uh-huh.
There was only so much I can learn from like these competitions, and I
Right.
wanted to be pushed a little bit more in like the professional world or the pre-professional studios and just like working with certain choreographers and all that kind of, it's just like it's so different. It's like it's good to have the training on
Yes.
top of rather than just like, oh, I'm gonna go to a competition. Because honestly, sometimes like competitions are great, but I've noticed that competitions are really just like a money grab.
Yeah.
I mean, I love the conventions and I love all that kind of stuff, but also at the same time, it's like sometimes dance teachers and owners of studios kind of forget why they do it rather than they do competitions for different reasons than they started it.
Yeah, I know. And I think that that tends to happen. And, I guess too, it's like important to remember your why, right? Like, why are you always doing something? And like that original, like core reason of why you start something and why you want to do something,
Yeah.
is always important. But I love that you had both, like, and because all of these other things that you learn from like company and like something, it's more training based. It's just, I think it's invaluable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah.
So, can you tell me a little bit about the process of choreographing not only all three seasons, but this season specifically? Is there anything that you did differently that you think pushed you to the
Hmm.
point you're at today?
Yeah, so with physical, it was really cool. We started season 1 and We were contracted for 3 seasons, but you never know. So it's like, could have just been one and done, but luckily we were able to go to 3 seasons. And so in the beginning, it was really about me developing, because most of my work was done with Rose Byrne, who plays Sheila Rubin. And so I was really like working one-on-one with her to develop and train her to get a vocabulary that worked for her character and worked for who she was, like aesthetically, like how her body works, right? It's like I could maybe do a couple of dance moves or aerobics moves, but it might not look the same on that character. So really tailoring and curating it to Sheila and to Rose was really first and foremost. So we started that process, and then yeah, and then designing all of the aerobic scenes and kind of making it feel as real as possible. We really were we didn't have a lot of rehearsal time on purpose because
I
we
was
wanted
gonna
it to
ask about that.
feel, yeah, we wanted it to feel authentic. Like for all the aerobics classes, like we didn't want it to be like it was super polished and like, you know, that we'd been rehearsing and everybody looks so great. Like we wanted like people like just thrown in there at the last minute and just kind of
Yeah.
following along and not really knowing what they're doing, because
Right.
that's real. There were moments that we got in season 2 and season 3 where there were more choreographic moments, where there were more like dance pieces. Like there was one in season 2 that I fell in love with Murray Bartlett and Rose Byrne, and they did this incredible duet in his house. And it was such a rewarding experience to work with the two of them, and like these seasoned actors who just like were so fun to work with and so game to do anything, and to design this whole piece on them was just incredible. And then, taking Sheila through her journey. She started season 1 as a certain type of person and woman, and all of her issues that are at the forefront of the show, and what the show centers on. And then we took her through to season 3, which kind of, she developed and she changed, and so that means that the movement changed a little bit and things got different, and the way she would approach things. And then in season 3, it was really cool. Like I think I had the trust of our director Stephanie Lang and the showrunner Annie Weissman. By season 3, they really trusted me, and so I was able to kind of really just design so many of the choreography, and just I had been able to design the choreography, but they just put so much trust in me that it was like they knew anything I put together was going to work for the camera that they needed. And so it was a really good like trust relationship, and they allowed me to kind of just fly with that. And so it was beautiful. And then I got to work with Zoe Deschanel in season 3, which was incredible. And we did a fun number there. And Rose is just an absolute true gem of a person in all respects. She is such a great human being, and she's extremely talented and just has like a wonderful, wonderful heart.
Lots of the time, when you get a job, they say like kind of separate your personal relationships and your business relationships,
Yep.
which I understand to an extent, but I feel like in this industry within itself, with my personality growing up as a dancer and growing up in like the arts industry and kind of doing all this stuff, I kind of put them hand in hand because I feel like that makes for a better product and a better final show or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, I
So
mean, I think that you're right. Like, I don't necessarily hang out with these people like now, but like during the projects, I do. I agree with you, because movement and dance too is um, it's so personal, and it's a lot of people don't trust themselves with movement, especially if they're actors, and if they haven't been trained in dance. So I think it's uncomfortable for a lot of them, but they're willing, right? And so there has to be an instant trust that you gain with them. And that's why, like you say, it's like to get that, like, yeah, like let's, get close with them, like, learn about them. And, so I've done that a lot with actors, which is like one of my favorite things. I love training and working with actors for projects. It's like, because yes, you get really close to them, you have to gain trust, you have to get the best product. And
yeah.
then, yeah, and then usually, everybody's life goes on, and, you keep in touch here and there, but in the moment, yeah, I do think it's important, because our art is such it's so special, and it really just can be so wonderful if people can trust it and let it. And if you don't have that with the person you're working with, it's very difficult.
So as a choreographer, when you first started working with actors rather than just dancers, how was that process for you when you were choreographing? Because I know obviously not all actors are like trained in dance.
Yeah.
So there's a different way to approach teaching.
Mhm.
So tell me a little bit about the way that you decided to go about that.
So I think it really comes down to story and script and character. So, with actors, I am really reading the scripts and I'm, paying attention to their character and like what kind of a person they are and what story they're trying to tell and what angle they would be coming at movement from. So that's kind of the actor side of it, right? And I really enjoy that. So then it's easier for me to go to an actor and kind of work from that space and then see how their body moves naturally and kind of build off that. And that's how I would approach it with an actor and kind of less about counts, right? It's like very intimidating sometimes. Like, oh wait, you have to do this on a 5, and then you get in your head and you're like, oh my God, like I don't know what I'm doing. And
Yeah.
I try to move past that and just be like, okay, like we're gonna do this, and you move here, and and like if there's like a musical cue or something, but I try to not get them so drilled into certain counts like I would with a dancer, right?
Right.
And then I would, if I had a whole production number with dancers, yes, you're doing this on 5. Everything is very clean and everything's different, but it's more story based and it's more about like taking you on a ride of the whole story with the actor and giving them a different way to look at it so that they're not so in their head about sticking to a count or sticking to a beat.
Yeah, it's a completely different approach.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I give you so much respect to you for that. You've obviously choreographed much more than just physical, and you've done so many incredible pieces over the past few years of you being in the industry. Not few years, but you grew up dancing. Out of all the projects that you worked on, did you expect this to be the one that would be an Emmy nomination? Um, was there another project that you did that you would have probably thought would have gotten a nomination before this one?
Not for TV, to be honest with you, because I think TV is different. Like, and unfortunately, we don't have a category for Oscars right now. We're trying to get that changed again. But we don't have that for film because I do a lot more film than I do TV.
Yeah.
So for a TV project, like I was happy about this one because I'm like, yeah, because I put so much into it and it was like, it felt right. I was like, yeah, like I wanted a nomination for that because I worked on it for 3 seasons. So aside from that, I feel like with TV stuff, it's been, a scene here, a scene there that's just kind of coming in and coming out, and it's not as special. So
Yeah.
it was nice to have that be recognized.
Yeah, congratulations again. I if I
You.
if that was me, I think I would have literally tears would be still coming out of my eyes about it.
Well, maybe that'll happen one day for
I
you.
hope so.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you would have done differently about the process?
Process of
Physical, season
a
3.
physical? That's a good question. Um,
You can
no,
take a second, think about it.
no, because I I learned so much, but I think that in order to grow, you've got to just go through things and you have to just like, okay, maybe I could have approached that differently. And I'll know that now, but I wouldn't have known that then because I didn't go through it yet. And so, you know, um, I think that it also helped to open my eyes up to like directing, that because I said the director gave me like a lot of trust, she was just like, no, you design this, you do this. And I didn't think I had that capability too. So I learned that. And maybe I didn't approach it perfectly, right? But now I know what I learned from her and then what I did with those scenes that I was like given and kind of handed, then I'll know what to do next time, And so I think that no, I wouldn't have changed it at all. I think I really think it was also there's just every project is great. Like I love what I do. I'm blessed to have a career that I adore. But not every project's, fantastic and perfect and, lovely. This one was just one of those that like I every day I loved going to work. The people were incredible. Like I have no complaints about it. It was absolutely almost perfect.
That's so awesome.
And
I
it doesn't happen all the time. So I want to just like pay like respect and honor to that because I'm like grateful for that. I'm really grateful for the experience.
Yeah, so you had a very good experience working with
Yeah.
both the cast and the crew.
Yeah.
I have a question about casting dancers.
Okay.
So, what do you let me think of this correctly. Um, how do you choose dancers when you look at a group of dancers in a room? What are the specific things that you look for in a dancer?
Um, okay, so I'll answer this in 2 parts. So firstly, it's going to be about what the project needs, right? So if I have to cast, 15 girls and they have to be, a mix of ranges of, diversity and they have to, be 5'5" ish, obviously then you have specifics, right? And so fine. But if you're going in blind and I'm just like, okay, I need 10 people for this, and it could kind of be whatever, right? Things I'm looking for in the room, and I'll just kind of like sidebar this for a second and say, I like to not audition dancers as much as possible because I know so many dancers now that I've learned how they work and who they are and what they can deliver. So I'm going to go with the people that I trust and know always first. If I have to do a casting, I will. But so if I have to and I get into a room, what I'm looking for is I always look at how a dancer first comes into the room. And I will pay attention, even if I'm like pretending I'm on my phone or I'm like talking over here to my assistant or whatever. I'm always clocking like who's talking, who's warming up, who's paying attention, who's getting themselves ready for the event, and who's like social butterfly all in the room, right? Dancers are very chatty and very, we are fun people. But when you're coming out for an audition for a job, you have to kind of show up in a different way.
Yeah,
So
there's etiquette.
those things right off the bat, I will pay attention to. And so then I'm like, they're little flags, right? And they're little kind of indicators. And then I want someone that's going to engage me. And it's like, I talk to dancers about this all the time when I'm training them. It's like, if I've got 10 brunettes standing in front of me and they all basically look the same, why am I going to pick you? Right? Why would I pick you? And it's this thing that it's hard to teach, but I try to convey it of, if you're not telling me something with the movement, if you don't have an active brain and heart as to the movement that's given to you, even in an audition setting, even in a hip hop class, even in a ballet class, doesn't matter what kind of a class it is, there has to be active like thinking on where you are, what are you doing, what are you trying to say, what's the point of doing this. Otherwise it's just empty moves. The choreographer is just giving you movement and you're like, okay, puppet, I'll just do it, right?
Yeah.
That I'm going to blow right by you, because then it's like, okay, I could just go to the next person. Yeah. There's got to be something that I'm like engaged by. And like when you go to a good movie, it's like, why you're engaged to the actors, because they're telling you something that you resonate with or that you feel. And so it's the same thing with dance. So if you take the movement that's given to you by any choreographer or any audition setting, then it's your job as the artist to show me what you have to say.
Yeah.
And so that will translate if you know how to do it and you think about doing that. And it's those dancers that don't really they just want to, they can kick as high as they want. They can turn, they can show me a million tricks, and that's cool. And that may work for like a couple like specialty moments in a project. But in terms of like, then if I know that there's like a person that's given it depth and given it time to think about, and they're like mature in that way, I'm going to go with that dancer for sure.
Every time I interview a choreographer or a dancer, that's one of the first things that I ask.
Mm.
Because I know that growing up I had like a different look on things. I was always like, I wasn't necessarily like very accustomed to the way of like auditions and things like that.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
So I that's always been something that's like super on I've like always been wondering about, because I'm such a perfectionist.
Mm-hmm.
So being a perfectionist definitely gets in the way of a lot of things.
Yes.
But at the same time, dance is so different on everyone's body. I
Mm-hmm.
had to learn a good balance between like adding my own flair and my own movement to the
Yeah.
choreography that's being given to me.
Yes. Yeah.
And yeah, so that's why I always I'm excited to hear what people have to say to what they look for in a dancer.
Yeah, and that's so important what you said, because it is a fine balance, right? It's like you want to have your own style about yourself and your identity, but you also can't change movement that's given to you. So it's really difficult, but that's wonderful that you've like figured that out and try to balance that out and figure out how you're special, right? Because and what you can bring to something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you see the role of dance and choreography evolving in film and TV?
Um, I think we're going to have a rebirth of really great projects. I actually know of a couple that I can't talk about, but that are coming up that will be coming out in the next 2 years that are going to be so thrilling with dance and movement in television and film, that I think it's going to kind of just pull our like do a 360 with our industry. I think sometimes things are cyclical, right? Actually, I know things are cyclical, but we've been going through a weird period, I think, of dance, and we had a really good high moment with all the like, So You Think You Can Dance and the Dancing with the Stars and all of that. And then we've had great projects and great tours for sure. But I think that like we've kind of lost just like the beauty of the art and just kind of like seeing great dance on film, like without everything being so chopped up or, too over sexualized or, whatever it is. And I think we're going to have a really nice moment of art and just quality coming out. And I think that's going to help this next generation too. Of course, it will be evolved and it will be on a different level and it won't go back to what it was. But I really think that there's some good players and choreographers in the mix right now that are part of good projects that are going to help to kind of boost the industry. And I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, awesome. So are
Yeah.
there any roles or projects that you're particularly interested in exploring in the future?
I'd love to do Broadway. I haven't done Broadway yet as a sole choreographer. I've been on as an associate choreographer, but I haven't done my own show yet, and I'd love to do that. Um, I would love to do a movie musical. Um, that would be fun because I love those. I think that's just absolutely brilliant. And I'd love to be on another TV show for a series of seasons. I loved that too. So those are my focuses. And those are my next kind of like, yeah, I'd like to get that. And it was funny when I was at the Emmys, my friend Nina, she won the Emmy. And she was sitting in front of me and I was like looking at it. I was like, gosh, it's so pretty. I really want one of those. Yeah, I need one of those. The statue is just so gorgeous.
I know, it's so beautiful.
So I was like, yeah, I gotta have one of those. So
Yeah.
yeah, so those would be my top three focuses for next projects that I really want to
So
tackle.
you said that you are very big into like musicals and
Mhm.
film like that. So I that's always been something that I love specifically. Like when I say I want to dance, performing is like my favorite thing in the entire world. I could be in the worst position of my life and you put me on a stage and I
Mm.
will be so happy.
Yeah.
But I've always wanted to be part of like a musical, like a TV type thing, a film specifically. Like if I could be in Hairspray or
Mhm.
like or something, like
Right.
I would be set with my life.
Yeah. Right.
So
Yeah.
that's definitely like one of my like biggest accomplishments that I would hope to
That's
do one
amazing.
day.
Are
But I
you
do
going to get out to LA are you moving out to LA to start a
I'm
career?
yes, I'm hoping to within the next year. I
Okay.
was wondering, I wanted to ask you about agencies. So I
Mhm.
know a lot of dancers go through agencies and stuff, but also you can get gigs through just like taking classes and like knowing people. And that's just kind of the way that the dance industry works. Like you don't necessarily have to go to college and get a degree to dance.
You don't need to go to college. Sorry, were you done with your question?
Oh, well, I was just kind of speaking, but
Go. Go.
the whole thing about what I meant to say was, would you recommend going through agencies as well?
If you're coming out here to be in the industry and to be in film and television, and commercial and tour and all of that, you will need an agent.
Mhm.
You don't need to have a college degree for that, to be in the industry, obviously, but it's great to have. I definitely am like a proponent of college and education and, getting a degree and, having that part of your life too. But most dancers will start without an agent because it's harder now to get a dance agent. So you kind of have to like, get your footing here. You have to like go to classes, get to meet people. And then yes, you would start by doing some non-union work, which is, work that you don't need to be in the union for. And it's like probably a little lower pay and you kind of get your feet wet and you start to meet people and you would do jobs like that without an agent. And then if you want to get considered for some bigger jobs that are more SAG and AFTRA based, which are the unions here, you will need to have an agent. It's really hard to do that without it. So yes, and you need to be in the union to be a part of that. So I think that most dancers though come out and they start with just smaller projects and seeing who they can meet because it really is about who you meet, right? It's like I've had a couple teachers at my dance studio that have come from different, they're like, New York or whatever, they've come from, Boston, or they've come from wherever, and they started taking my class and they started to get to know me. And then I hired them to be a teacher at my dance studio. And then a few of them now have worked on like 3 films with me. So it's like, that takes time, but that's how kind of it works. It's like the more secure and the more trusting that you can get with people and you understand that what their talents are and what they're good at, Of course, like I want to, share that love, but it does take time, but it's very important to come out here and to start to just make yourself like get out there and see, what you like and who's around and who's teaching, and always trying to find those teachers that are working choreographers, and to get in their class and to start, seeing who they are and who they like and what kind of projects they do. And then making your relationships, and then you can get an agent.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. All right. So I wanted to say thank you so much for your time today. It was great speaking with you, not only as a journalist, but as a dancer. Like I said earlier, I find it super, I'm so happy that I get to do talk about what I love
Yeah.
rather than just like going to school for being a journalist was something I wanted to do, but I always wanted to do it because I love the entertainment aspect of it all.
Yeah.
And all I do is talk all the time. And if I'm not talking, I'm dancing.
Uh-huh.
So talking about dance is like my favorite thing to do.
Oh, that's sweet.
So
Yeah.
I want to say thank you so much for your time. It was great talking to you.
Yeah. Well, thanks for reaching out to me. And when you decide to come out here, make sure you reach out to me.